I'm tired. I am Brent Leary.
Well, if you want, I can be Brent Leary today, just so you can rest.
Nah, that's okay. I
All
think
right,
I can do it
then.
another day.
All right, then. In that case, I'm Paul Greenberg.
And it is Friday. We are the CRM Players, and excuse the intrusion. We're talking sports today. There's a lot to talk about too.
It's it actually it's like so every sport, one way or the other, has obviously been massively impacted by the pandemic, and we've seen basketball go into a bubble. We've seen football decide not to, and now team after team's getting infected. We've seen leagues like the SEC and the NFL still, and others allowing fans into the stands like idiots, and everyone's getting infected. And then we see baseball where all in all, other than that early thing with the Marlins, not that many people have actually gotten infected with no bubble. However, it's we are right in the middle of the playoffs, and
Playoffs? I'm
yeah,
sorry. When everybody says playoffs, I always have to go the Jim Mora.
right.
Playoffs? I can't help it. It's
Playoff.
like a knee jerk reaction. I can't
That
decide.
wasn't actually wasn't too bad. Right, right. So, but that's actually kind of an accurate reaction now. Like playoff, what playoff? Right? It's like unless you're listening to a baseball specific station or an ESPN which has a baseball specific segment, you don't even hear vague amount of discussion about it particularly. No one's like freaking out over the fact that the Braves are about to beat the unbeatable Dodgers,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and the Astros have won two in a row after the Tampa Bay, the Rays have won the first three, and I mean, all those have happened. Nobody really cares that much, and with me, that with the Yankees not being there, I don't really care at all. I mean, I do have an ideal scenario, though, I have to tell you, and then I'll be quiet. But this is my ideal scenario: the Astros lose to the Rays. The Astros have to lose because they're cheaters and they're assholes about it, right? Well, that's the thing. It's not like okay, they cheated, they got caught, but they don't need. Not they're arrogant about it. That's the part I can't get over. How do you get arrogant about the fact you were caught cheating? Look, other people probably cheat. I don't doubt in baseball lots of teams cheated. Maybe the Yankees did too. It's why they want to suppress that report. But the reality is you got caught and you're still unwilling to admit that it did. Why would you cheat if it didn't do anything for you? If it didn't help you in the slightest, why would you have done it? Right. And so they need to lose to the Rays, but the Rays are also a bunch of snots. Right. So so here's the ideal scenario. Rays beat Astros, Braves beat Dodgers, Braves beat Rays. I'm rooting for the National League for the first time in my life. If the Dodgers win, which I don't think they will, I think the Braves have something special here, then I'll still root for the Dodgers over the Rays. I've never rooted for the National League ever. I am this year. First time. So there you have it. Rays defeat Astros, and then I hope rub their faces in it. And then Dodgers lose to Braves, and the Braves, who happen to be, relative to the other guys, a really nice bunch of people, right? So let them win. Let a really nice bunch of people win this. Freddie Freeman, he got COVID. He had publicly said, "I was frightened. I was going to die." I mean, he was like a real person talking about it rather than, "Nah, I never thought I." It's not like that. He's a good guy. A lot of those things. So, all right. One final thing. Rays beat Astros, stomp on them after they beat them. Then Dodgers lose to Braves. Braves win World Series. Go Braves.
All right. First of all, let me just say, I don't know, tutti frutti to Sven, or whatever language you choose today. Nice to always have him here, and I wish I could say the same, but there's Bob Fagel. He's here with us too. None of these teams are really that relevant. Okay, well, let me tell you why they are relevant. Now, if some people may have noticed, I'm a Rams fan. You know,
What? You keep
I,
that
I,
so well disguised. I don't know how anyway.
I know, I try.
Wow,
But
it's amazing.
of course,
So
the Rams play out of Los Angeles, but I live in Stockbridge, Georgia, which is in Metro Atlanta. I'm 30 minutes from downtown. So here we are. It's the National League LCS League Championship Series, and it's the Braves playing the Dodgers. Now, some people may think that I probably should have a rooting interest, being that I one of my favorite football team is in LA, and I live in Atlanta. I have no rooting interest whatsoever, so I'll just put that out there first. But that's just me. Here we are. Atlanta is like one game away from the World Series. And, we haven't been there since like the 90s. Kind of been close a couple of times. Haven't been there in the 90s, since Glavine and Maddox and Schmaltz and Chipper.
Bobby Cox. Yeah.
Yeah, all those guys. And I mean, and people love those guys. Now, I'm saying we're one game away, and it kind of doesn't feel like we're even there. I mean, this is just my perspective. I guess part of it is because the LCS is in a bubble. The playoffs for Major League Baseball went to the bubble.
Right.
So you just don't feel, I mean, there's like no hometown. It just feels weird. But here's the other reason or other thing that's going on. And I hear people talking about this way more than they're talking about the World Series. Hey, Ramon, what's up? Good to see you.
Ramon.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
The man. I guarantee if that lower third could move, it would be moving if Ramon was on it.
Oh, absolutely. He's never
sits still.
No. So
the man.
So we're in the midst. We're one game away from the World Series. And you know what people are talking about? Well, there's two things that they're talking about more than they're talking about the Braves. At least that's what I'm hearing. The Falcons are 0-5, and they had to fire Dan Quinn, and they fired the general manager, Thomas Dimitrioff, and everybody is talking about this. Everybody's talking about the Falcons 0-5 more than the Braves being on the cusp of going to the World Series. They're also talking about the big Alabama UGA game is this weekend. This is like the biggest game of the year to date. People are talking about that more than they're talking about the Braves. And they're also talking about the impending impact of COVID-19 on this because Nick, what's his name, down in Bama, Nick Saban, he has coronavirus, and I don't think he's going to be actually at the game. So he's going to be like coaching from a bunker in Alabama. He's quarantined. And I think there's been some COVID issues with UGA. So all of this stuff is being talked about way more than the Braves on the cusp of going to the World Series. It's kind of crazy.
It's sad, obviously, but that football is still the most intense sport, especially SEC football, and pro football too. But here's the thing:
SEC first, SEC got
right. No, well, their SEC first
down here in Atlanta. It's SEC
in Virginia. We got Virginia Commonwealth and UVA. That's not exactly great teams, right? So, right. I mean, I'm Big Ten, so I get like the number 2 conference, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Northwestern game a week from Saturday. But honestly, no matter how much people are trying to treat it otherwise, and even as much as you might or might not have enjoyed it, a 60-game baseball season isn't a baseball season. I mean, that's the other side of it. If the Braves were on the cusp of the World Series after 162 games of battling it through, a lot more people would be talking about it. And if they won it, of course, it would be a gigantic parade in Atlanta. Yeah. But it's 60 games. And so even though there will be no asterisk by anyone's names, there's a mental asterisk every fan has. And to me, even look, I'm disappointed in the Yankees, but I didn't care as much either, right? This year, like I normally, me, you can't. I mean, I'm not. Look, I can't say I'm as bad as you, right? When it comes to a game day, right? Because if I was, keep in mind, there are 162 game days, and you'd never see me, and everyone in the entire industry would hate me unless the Yankees won, right? So if you literally could decide on how much you want to interact with me by the game every night for half a year, right? So, but it would have meant a lot more either way if the Yankees, like last year, the 103 game wins, which is an amazing season, right? But I was severely disappointed that we didn't get to the World Series. This year we didn't. I just said, all right, I'm done. It's over. No big deal. It didn't bother me. I mean, I was pissed at the Rays, because I don't like them. But it was more like I don't like the Rays. If we were playing a team I liked, there are American League teams I like. If Cleveland had kind of beaten us, I would have been okay with that because I like Cleveland. But the reality is it just didn't matter the same way. And I think that's with all of because baseball had by far, from a scheduling standpoint, by far the most abbreviated disparity of schedule, right? And consequently had the least meaning in terms of and plus the biggest changes in rules. That 7-inning doubleheader thing with the extra inning man on second, which is I hope to God they get rid of that stupid rule. And then you're realizing how bad the umpires are in all of this, how awful they act. That's the other thing that's just been. You have guys like Joe West and Angel Hernandez who are like, I mean, those guys are so awful that even the broadcasters say it, right? So, that's what I mean. I've been playing in this as many times as I can. I've been playing in this sort of simulation baseball league with Scott. Scott Jeffer and I are partnering. Scott's the Yankees guy, and we're playing against Canadian broadcasters and actors. Weirdly, I had to miss it last night because I had to do some work. But the guy we were playing against last night, for example, was one of the stars of Blind Spot, the guy who played Rich.com, right? He was actually the guy we were playing against. He beat us 2 out of 3 with the 2001 Yankees, right? So, but that's what I'm saying. It's like that kind of league. One of the problems we have to start 8 or 9 o'clock because the Blue Jays, through the season, we're starting later because the Blue Jays broadcaster had to broadcast the game before they could play, right? So, that was more fun than that has been more fun than the actual baseball season, right? So, it's kind of the way it is. And I think that's part of the reason no one's talking about it, because there's a mental asterisk in all baseball fans' heads about this whole year.
Yeah, that's true. But I do think that if they actually do win it, the Braves, they'll be happy people here. But
of course. And if the Yankees won it, I would have been thrilled. But
I'll tell you what, if Georgia beats Bama this week, they'll be way more happier people.
Oh yeah. But you know what? I'm sorry to everybody in Atlanta, but I'm actually rooting for Bama. It's kind of become my SEC team is Alabama. Gotta say,
I just love SEC football. It's great. So anyway, wow. All right, we really we weren't expecting to spend that much time on that, but it was fun.
But it was fun to rant.
Yeah, we didn't even really talk about the Lakers winning the NBA. And,
no.
The NBA did
the LeBron versus Jordan debate that's been going on.
I'm not going there.
You want to know something? Aside from not going there, it's a ridiculous debate. I wish people would just shut up. Right? Be quiet. Here's our take on it. I'm speaking officially for me and Brent. Everybody shut up about it. That's our take on it. We think that everybody should shut up about it. How's that?
Yes. How's that? And now let's introduce our guest. After
that would be nice.
So welcoming thing. Here we are. Here's Scott McIntosh. Thank you for joining us, man. Well, thank you for coming back because it's been a while.
Yes, right. I have to thank the amazing Wi-Fi up here in Toronto for my for my last cancellation.
Wait a minute. Hold on, just a second. Is Bob Finkel? Did you take over Sven's handle or something? What is this? What is this?
Oh, no.
We're not going in there.
He's under Patriots mind control.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's Sven. I'm sorry. I think we're going to have to cut off our European connection now.
That's right. What's going on here. You've lost all credibility, Sven. Sorry.
All right. So hey, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming back, man.
Oh,
so
like how could I
listen,
refuse
man,
an invitation from Paul and Brent to get on here? I mean,
oh, are you kidding, man? This is like a pleasure. So here's Spence got angelic. So for those of you who don't know Scott, and you should, he's running the SAP sports practice, and I gotta tell you, doing a damn good job of it. Right? There's other things I could throw in there about the company, but I'm going to stop with that. Right? And he unlike what makes Scott really, really unique that I know of, at least I've looked at all the other teams that have sports. All the other tech companies that have sports practices, and Scott's one of, if not the only one of the very, very few who actually came from the sports side, right? A lot of them were just tech guys who were put in charge of the practice, but Scott actually came in from sports, did a few other things, and now runs sports practice for SAP. And the other thing, seriously nice man, right?
Canadian. I had nothing to do with it. I just grew up in Canada. It's standard.
Hey, before we get too far, I do have to ask one question, because I don't recall if we even got to the question when the first time it came on. So, Scott, do you have a favorite football team?
I do. I think it's your second favorite team.
Oh, okay, what's that?
Well, you can't have a second favorite team, so I will say it's the Green Bay Packers.
All right, that's cool. We're good with that.
That's okay. It actually is. The Rams and the Packers are my 2 second favorite teams.
Well, for a kid who grew up in a small town in Canada on a dairy farm, population 5, I mean, I don't know that there was any other choice but to become a Green Bay Packers fan. I mean, cheeseheads. You're looking in the backyard, and all of a sudden you see what you see in the backyard inside the stadium. So it's just like home.
Were you actually growing cheese for cheeseheads?
Wow.
making cheese for cheeseheads? You said you were a dairy farm.
We didn't have a license with the NFL, so I won't answer that question.
Is this like a bootleg cheese going on here?
Yeah, bootleg cheese.
Well, I know we can't get anything across the border from a dairy perspective anymore, so
that's right.
Our business is wiped out now.
So I remember I actually went to Lambo a few times, and let's say this: only once did I run into a guy, and I'm serious. There's one guy who was wearing real cheese on his head. I remember looking at him thinking, is this guy like doing a goof, or is he like a tourist who really thinks you're supposed to wear real cheese? I couldn't tell, but you could smell the cheese.
I hope it was December and not a September.
Well, yeah, it was cold. It was cold. It was definitely cold. It was freezing cold, actually. And but I'll never forget, because we were sitting, like, the seats we had were probably like a row from him, right? And you look around the stadium, there's obviously everyone wearing plastic cheesehead. Not this guy. He's wearing like this brand. It wasn't as big as the actual cheesehead, but it was big.
But still, he had cheese on his head.
No, and it was like this big. And what he had done is put it like in a frame, to hold it, right? And then mount it with like something kind of like this, really. It's not quite a headphone, but like something that would lock over his head. And then it was up square with a big piece of cheese.
My goodness.
He must have had a great contact at a manufacturing plant.
It was kind of... Well, the good news about that is, you could snack on what was on your head if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you ran out of melted cheese in your plastic nacho plate, you had enough.
Right.
I think I would go the Homer Simpson route, like the donut head thing. You put
right. Then just turn and bite.
Yeah,
so have you ever been to Lambeau to watch Packer games?
No.
No.
I have not yet been to Lambeau. You know what? I think at a certain point, sometimes you wait for that perfect moment, and now I'm like waiting for that perfect moment. But I realize this pandemic has made me realize that there's no use waiting. I got to get out there. You said you've been there a couple times.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And again, I'm a Giants fan primarily, but I will say it's not just Lambeau. You have to be, the best thing to do is you show up in Green Bay on Friday night or Friday. Then Friday night and Saturday night, you just go out and drink and eat in town. And what you'll see then, first, the entire city of Green Bay is out eating and drinking.
Yeah.
And so are about several dozen ex-Packers who are just out eating and drinking with everybody. Like when I went to this bar with the people I was with. My one of my closest friends ever, family owns tickets, has tickets to Lambo. Then we would fly out there every year or two and go to a game. And so we were in this bar eating with him and his family. And off in the corner, eating and drinking with everybody is Willie Wood and Herb Adderley, right? They're just like people. Now, I think Willie Wood, passed away this year, but those two they just hung around the town during game day. And then game day and then you'd just go around the town and you'd see things like, Mike McCarthy Way and not, it was everything. Every Packer coach and player pretty much had a street or a middle school named after them, right? And it was amazing. And then game day was even the most amazing thing of all. So you drive to the stadium. And of course, everyone's tailgating outside the stadium. But what was really amazing, people, like, you could be 11, 12, 15 miles away in a Target parking lot, and there were people tailgating there, right? Every parking lot in the city of any size was hundreds of people just tailgating all over the city. Then the game would happen, and after the game, just to give you an example, my friend's mother and her old friends would tape the game, on VHS, and then after they would literally watch it afterwards and analyze the gameplay. And they were like 80-year-old ladies, right, who were just sitting there analyzing every play of the game. It was during the Brett Favre era mostly, right? So it was amazing. It's just watching the town be there is one of the most I've never seen anything like. You want to talk about a fan experience? Yeah, that's the place you go.
Oh my God,
that's the place you go.
It sounds like you should have for those relatives have grandma and grandpa or grandma and her sister mic'd up and do their own in-home broadcast. I know there's a technology out there right now that allows you to actually broadcast the games for yourself.
There is?
With your
what
friends.
Is that?
Yeah. I got to look it up. I shouldn't have brought up something without knowing the name of it, but let me look it up. Was that
when you get a chance?
Yeah, when you get a chance. But I think there's some of that going on it's Foxborough, but is it Gillette Stadium or something like that? Is that where the Patriots play? Yeah. I hear there's a lot of that, like little old ladies, in the stands because they love the team, and they're like, keeping the stats and running the video camera and
right, feeding it to the Patriots, feeding to Belichick. So how did you get to sports? How did you go from sports to tech, and how did you get to SAP sports practice?
Good question. I'll start off. I guess my role now is really around data. Obviously, I think when you look at SAP, but when I look at SAP, anyways, I think about it as a company that helps you to move data from start to finish inside your business, right? And then draw it out where you need to make decisions. To keep it very simple. I spent my whole life growing up wanting to be the GM of a sports team. Like I'm sure both.
Really? You when you were a little kid, you said, you know what? I want to be a GM.
God, yeah.
Really? I've never heard anybody say that before.
Sorry, I wanted to be an athlete until I was 13, 14. Then I realized there's no chance of that happening. My 3-inch vertical cut me right out of the deck there. But honestly, it all started, as stupid as this sounds, I was 4 or 5 years old, lived in a dairy farm. My grandmother got the newspaper. So I could not go and read about sports unless I went and visited grandma, who did not like sports. So while she was watching Bob Barker from 10 o'clock to 11, The Price is Right, I would steal the sports section, and every day I would read the sports section for probably the time I was like, I'd say whenever I started reading, 7, 8. And that just continued and continued. And my love of sports just grew and grew. My neighbor gave me his old collection of Sports Illustrated. He pulled them out of an old bin in his attic, brought them over. So I was reading and getting, the daily stuff, but also a bit of a historical perspective. So I started to kind of really appreciate all the interesting things that were going on. And, after that, from a GM perspective, my dad got involved in fantasy hockey playoffs, right? So a playoff hockey pool is pretty simple, right? Back in the day, you pick the players, and whoever scored the most points to the end of the playoffs wins the championship. So I'm a 12, 13-year-old boy, and I'm like, Dad, can you get me into this draft somehow with your old timers team? He's like, yeah, no, maybe next year. So finally, I get to the draft first year, and I watch it, and everybody's just picking their favorite players. Back in the day, it would be Mario Lemieux. Even though Pittsburgh might go one round, Mario Lemieux was somebody's first or second choice. And I was starting to think about it. And, the next year I went and I built a very simple little calculation, points per game, games played. And I thought about, okay, who's going to get to the finals? And back in those days, it was Montreal or Boston or whatnot. And I built this and I made my picks. And my dad's friends are looking at me like, what the hell is this guy doing, taking the third line center for the Montreal Canadiens as his fifth pick? But, my calculation said, he's going to end up with twice the points of Mario Lemieux because he's going 4 rounds and Mario's going 1. So I won the pool 3 years in a row. And then I can't remember if they kicked me out or they just stopped doing it or what the end result was. But that kind of really got me interested in, data and I guess trying to solve problems. So fast forward a few years, big baseball fan, massive Expos fan. And I'm coming out of university and I can't get a job with the Expos. They won't return my calls. They won't answer my letters. Email.
Should have let me know, man. I would have put a word in for Gary Carter, or I think Andre Dawson might have been there still.
Yeah,
100%. Steve Rogers, John Wetland.
Good team, actually. That was a good team.
Pedro. Is it Pedro there? Like in the early night?
Yeah. 94.
Yeah. Pedro was there. Mark Langston came in for a bit. Randy Johnson.
That's right.
I forgot all about him. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my dream. So none of the Expos wanted to respond to my note. So I picked up the phone and I had gotten the Baseball America directory. So this is back in the day. I couldn't just search on the internet, right? So I literally called up every single Expos affiliate until I got a hold of one of the GMs. And it happened to be Burlington, Vermont. And, the GM answers his phone and I'm like, oh shit. Like, now what do I say? Like, I didn't expect this. So I'm like, listen, Canadian kid, I walked him through how I've been following the Expos for so long. I know their minor league system inside out. I'm like, listen, do you have any internships? And he's like, yeah, if you can get yourself across the border down to Burlington, Vermont, we have one waiting for you.
Wow.
That's
so,
cool.
That was, quick end of the story. But so I show up a month later, school's over, get in my car, drive down to the border, and I show up and I get to the border crossing. And this might eliminate my ability to get back into the U.S., but I'm going to tell my story anyways. The guy at the border is like, where are you headed? I'm like, oh, I'm heading down to Burlington, Vermont. I'm going to spend my summer working for the Expos. He's like, okay, let's see some paperwork. And my GM had wrote me a little letter, saying, hey, we're not paying Scott. He's just coming down here to learn about the business for 4 months. And then, he's kind of returning back to Canada. So the guy looks at this and he's like, this is getting you nowhere. He's like, go back home, see what you can do, make some adjustments, but this is not going to get you in. So I go back home. I call the GM back up, Kyle Bostwick, who I think might still be down there. And he writes me another letter, faxes it to me. I get it. Changed a couple things. Like, he's the GM and I'm an intern. Like, he's not going to spend 20 minutes trying to fix this letter to get me across the border. So I head down the next day, show up at the border, drive up, and the border crossing guard looks at me and he says, "Where are you off to?" I'm like, "I'm just heading down to Burlington, Vermont to work for the Expos." He's like, "I love baseball. Enjoy your summer." And I kind of looked left and right, and I just put my foot on the gas and started going. And
Wow.
I came back once or twice, and I just said, I'm heading down to see my aunt. She's got a cottage just outside of Burlington. So that was my first kind of ticket into the industry. And I think, like everybody says, it's not easy to get into sports, but when you get that first opportunity, you do whatever you can. I was a mascot one night. I was on the grounds crew. I was doing cotton candy,
Wow.
selling sponsorship, ticket sales, merchandise. Like, you got to see every aspect of the business, and that really opened my eyes up to just how interesting it is behind the scenes, and not just looking at it from the layer where you're watching the broadcast. So fast forward, I spent a couple more years in baseball. My first paying job was somebody I met at the baseball winter meetings that same year. I went down there with a bunch of guys from the Vermont Expos, and they introduced me to a few people. It might have been on Bourbon Street that we met back in the day when you could socialize. The guy I met that night was my first interview the next morning. And as you might guess, we were both not a picture of beauty from the prior evening's activities.
Oh, you got to say we were both had a pitcher of beer or something.
Right.
We had both had a hurricane from one of those little twirling washing machines as you run along Bourbon Street. So we sat down, and right away he's like, "Listen, I enjoyed spending time with you last night. You seem like a really good guy. Let's figure out a way to get you this job." And I'm like, "Well, I'm Canadian." And he's like, "Well, you're going to need some kind of a special skill. So let me look through the NAFTA free trade agreement." And he's like, "All right, you got to go back and find me something you can do that I can't find anybody else to do." So I said, "Listen, I got a high school bilingual certificate, so I can speak French and English." He's like, there we go. So my job was the official translator.
Really?
That was my job description. So he wrote me up a job description. I headed down to the border again and handed it to the border guard, paid him $110, got a stamp and a 1-year working visa, and headed down to Florida.
Did you actually do the translating?
No, not for a second. But it was the Montreal Expos, French Canadian, so it kind of made sense. So anyways, that was my introduction into the sports industry. And from there, did ticket sales, did sponsorship, figured out the revenue side of the business, worked eventually towards doing some grad school because I realized, I was not smart enough to get to the level that I wanted to inside the industry. I'd learned a ton, but I knew I needed to pick up some more things. So went back to school, went to Toronto, worked for a startup sponsorship firm, XMC, which does a lot of our big brands here in Canada, and eventually ended up at Maple Leaf Sports, one of the biggest sports and entertainment organizations in North America. Now they have 7 teams between the G League, NBA, AHL hockey, NHL hockey, Toronto FC in the MLS.
Wow. So do they own most of the, outside of the Blue Jays, I guess, most of the Toronto teams?
Everyone except for the Toronto Blue Jays.
So they own the Argonauts or whatever. Is that the Argonauts? Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, they do.
Holy cow.
It's owned by Rogers and Bell, which are 2 of the biggest.
Yeah. Huge
content moguls, and Larry Tannenbaum. And then the Blue Jays are owned by Rogers only.
Right.
So Rogers essentially owns all of the teams, but they wouldn't allow, I guess, one entity to have them.
Right.
That's kind of how it put itself out. Yeah, exactly. So I got to the point in my career where, data was starting to become really big. Every decision we were starting to look at was around, how do we figure out things from a fan perspective? We have our ticket holders, we just have their names, maybe their email address. But we also have all these people buying merchandise, and we've got data coming from everywhere. How do we figure that out? And, it's still a problem today, but back then you really didn't know a lot of your customers. You knew your season ticket holders and the names on those accounts. But if you look at it from a 20,000 seat stadium perspective, you've got 3,500 season ticket accounts. So you have those 3,500 names. You didn't have their partners. They were handing tickets out for business. So your understanding of your audience was pretty limited back then, right? And you were starting to get access to data. Technology was starting to come in. You were starting to build a CRM infrastructure. You weren't really building a data warehouse or anything like that yet, but you had all these stacks of data on your fans in different places. So that pushed me and a few of the guys at the team to really just start asking questions, right? And eventually moved me to once again go back to school and get a master's in management analytics. So I was doing the job of running BI and data with the Senators back in the day, but I was just doing it based on what I thought was the right way to do it. I didn't have that background in coding and really building a data warehouse and things like that. So I got to go back to school and figure that out. And then I saw the industry really moving in that direction, where every big meeting and strategy session you were in was around data, and it was time for me to really figure that part out. Did that.
So what was the Senators and the hockey teams generally at that time, were they actually doing sort of what baseball does now, which is a lot of analytics in addition to some, let's say, scouting reports on individuals, so that they can determine, like the Yankees got Luke Voigt based almost entirely on analytics, really.
Yeah.
He was, nobody gave him, 5 seconds of time. The Cardinals completely misunderstood him.
Yep.
And it was the Yankees analytics department that said, take a flyer on this guy, and turned up obviously into a great thing. So with the hockey teams, like the Senators time, were they actually looking at that sort of thing too?
Not at that time. That would have been back in 2011 to 14. Data was just starting to come into play, really, like all of the big data, if you want to call them, stats that have been developed recently have really only come out in hockey in the last 10 years. So yeah. A lot of teams weren't as heavy into that as you would see in baseball, right? So that really just has developed, I'd say, in the last 5 years in hockey. As you've got amazing companies like, SportLogic and whatnot, taking video and creating like really, really influential data and data points that drive value. So you're starting to see that a lot more now, but back in the day, no, it was still a scout's eyeballs really making those decisions at that point. So, I did that for a bit, and I'll go back to your question. SAP, was looking for somebody who had some experience on the team side of sports, understood analytics, and had sold technology inside of sports. And
what year is this?
This is 2018.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So 2.5 years ago. And they had already had a sports and entertainment division, about 130 people globally. And they'd built some really interesting sports specific technology like Sports One, which is an athlete management system. And they were getting into smart stadium, built a solution out with the 49ers to really incorporate the data about how a fan experiences the game start to finish. And let's build a dashboard, let's build a control center so we can have a say in what that experience looks like for everybody. So going into SAP, to be honest, I knew nothing more about SAP than the fact it was a big company that I thought was doing ERP. Bringing data from start to finish, right on the ops side. But what I discovered by walking in there is really that It's still a really big company, but there's a lot of soft and nimble areas that are doing really interesting things from a technology perspective, and all really around, trying to help people do their jobs better on a day-by-day basis. So I was lucky.
How we're what about 8 months into this pandemic thing? Have you noticed
Yep.
any ways that the industry is using data differently because of what's going on?
I mean, I think one of the things that they're really starting to realize right now, like, I think I have so much respect for people on the team side of sports, and Paul would know this very well from his time at Seat. Some of the most intelligent people I've been around, their challenge is they're so under-resourced. As much as they spend money on the team side, they're spending, $25 million on this ball player. Why can't they spend some money on technology? A lot of these people on the team side are wanting and trying to build really interesting things. But sometimes the biggest challenge is resources, right? So what this break allows them to do is, they're not reacting as much to what's going on a day-by-day basis. They have time to take a step back and start doing some planning. So if I look at it, from a data perspective, it's now really about, not just the fans inside the venue, because once again, you don't have fans in the venue anymore. So what are you doing to create a digital experience for your customers, right? And here's an interesting way I think to look at it. Let's take the Golden State Warriors as an example, right? One of the best, brands out there in basketball, but they've got for numbers' sake, to make this calculation easy, a 20,000 seat stadium, and they've got 45 home games between regular season and preseason, right? So 900,000 people inside their venue on any given year, right? That's the max. You can't have anybody else in there, right? And they're paying, let's say, on average, $100 a ticket, right? So you're driving $90 million in ticket revenue, right? But in reality, it's probably only 30% of those 900,000 that are actually going to the game between season ticket holders and mini packs and everything else. So really, you have 270 to 300,000 people who actually set foot inside the venue. And then you look at, okay, well, who are all the fans of the Golden State Warriors? And if you look at things from a social perspective, you've got Real Madrid, who's got 231 million followers on social. The Golden State Warriors, I think, are more around, I think it's maybe 30 million.
Wow, what a difference.
But you've got 30 million people who are interested enough to tell you about it, right? So you have the power now to go back and start asking some questions to these fans. What is it that they might want to see? So if you can get to the point where you can create an experience for them, so you've got 30 million fans who said they like you, even if it's 1/3 of that, let's say it's 10 million. If you can get 1% of them, so 100,000 people, to buy a coffee from you every night that there's a game, so you charge them $2 or $3 to create a virtual experience, and you can do that 45 times, you can actually get back some of that lost revenue from a ticketing perspective. And I'm making it seem really simple here, but you have people who've already told you they like you. And I think one of the biggest challenges with data is trying to get the right information, right, in whatever industry that you're in. And you guys are both sports fans, right? So Brent, if the LA Rams send you an email and say, hey, Brent, you want to sit the 50-yard line, 10 rows up, answer these 3 questions. Are you married? Do you have kids? What's your email address? Or what's your phone number? What are you going to do?
For seats at the 50-yard line, if I had a wife, I'd let you use her for a while, kids too,
Yeah,
Brent would faint. Brent would actually just faint because the Rams contacted him.
I know. That's a whole other story. But yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So right away, you know, you're getting your audience to give you unbelievably valuable information, right? This is information that I will say, I want to name a brand. So let's say it's a jean manufacturer, right? You buy a pair of jeans from them. They got your email address. They send you a survey. What are the chances you're going to answer that for a pair of free jeans? You know, like 0%. So you've got all of this super interesting information that 30 million, 10 million people are willing to give you. If 1% of them, that's still a ton of really, really valuable data to help you build an experience that they will consume and give you a few dollars for. So from a data perspective, you know, SAP bought a company a couple of years ago. I think you might know of it, Qualtrics, for a few
For
dollars.
a few shillings,
Yeah.
yeah.
Price of a season ticket.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But, you know, here's where, you know, when I look back to like school and growing up learning business, you always had like, you know, sales, marketing, operations, and you had this like R&D area over here that nobody really knew what was going on. You're like, okay, yeah, they're figuring stuff out. Well, I mean, Qualtrics is all about customer experience, right? And customer experience is all about evaluating people's experience at different layers of how they move through your digital experience or through your stadium. So now you're capturing all of this data and bringing it back to build a really interesting experience. So that's what we see a lot of teams doing right now. And they may be using, you know, obviously I'm not saying they're using Qualtrics, but they're using whatever tool it is that they use to research their customers. And now you have an opportunity to go back and build a experience, a virtual experience. And now you've got this 30 million fan base. They can go after, segment it down. You know, the young socials want a chance to hang out with each other, want a chance to, you know, video chat, do all that fun stuff, drink some beers, shotgun some beers in their parking lot outside their house. But then you've got the corporate side. You know, maybe they want to hang out, talk business, be more of a formal setting. You got the families. So you can build 4 or 5 different virtual experiences and go back and really cater those to, you know, whatever your segment looks like as a team.
But so how does that actually, I'll call it physically, meaning what does that actually look like if you're I mean, ultimately, if you say, let's say a more formal setting, corporate experience, you're not at the stadium. So what is it, like a Zoom meeting with a logo? I mean, you know, you see what I mean? It's like, it can be interpreted so that it's really not all that much. On the other hand, it needs to be all that much in order to be something that is memorable enough for me to want to continue to spend money on it, right? With that team. So how does it look different than a corporate experience looks, for example?
Well, I mean, in some cases, you don't even want it to look that different, because that's what they were paying for beforehand, right? In other areas, and they're going to tell you, your fans are going to tell you the way that they want it to look, and that's really what matters. And that's why, you know, doing this R&D, asking these questions, going out to your audience in those different segments. You're not building a product that you think people are going to buy or that you would buy. You're building a product that they've told you that they want to consume. And I think, you know, that's an area that I think teams are starting to compile this data. And I'm hoping, you know, we'll see a lot of teams going out with something like this as we come back to play.
So who does SAP who do you what's your partner strategy? Because I know it's each sports practice for each company has I'll say they may be what do you call it, similar, but they're not identical in terms of how they think about partnering and thus who they end up partnering with. Mm-hmm. So how does that work with you guys?
From a partner perspective, are you saying from a technology infrastructure perspective or a sponsorship, like,
both?
Okay, both. So from a partnership perspective, when it comes to technology, I'll walk through what an athlete management system does, right? For us, our Sports One system. We're not creating a lot of the technology, but we're partnering with more niche solutions. So I'll bring it back to baseball or to basketball. You may have a shot angle technology that just looks at the angle of the shot or the release point of a 3-point shooter, right? And that might be data that's kind of sitting in one spot, but you need to integrate that with everything else that you want to look at from that player, right? So how many times have they taken a jump shot in this game? How much effort did they put in practice the day before from a load management perspective? So are they going to be too tired to be taking these 3-point shots in the fourth quarter? Who's the one that's likely to want to do this? So when I look at Sports One, it's really about integrating data from all of these partner companies who work directly with the teams, maybe selling them this solution, maybe setting video cameras up around the court, might be having the athletes wear a wearable technology to look at the amount of sprints, their heart rates. All of those components get pulled back into our Sports One system. And then from a modular perspective, you have, the athletic trainers who are looking at, data around, just pure athlete effort, right? To look at that load management. You have the coaches that are looking at video and looking at, the way players are moving to create openings. So it's a tactic insight, area that teams would find value in. So we have a 5 or 6 module solution that each of those modules work with a partner that creates the data that then gets pushed back and integrated on the back end into an analytics solution. So our SAP Analytics Cloud, which brings all this data back, and you're creating dashboards or alerts for your coaches or for upper management. So, for instance, your coach comes in the next morning after, the game on Sunday, and he wants to set the practice roster for Tuesday's practice. And he realizes that one of his goalies has an injury. The physio a day before had noted that injury, had said that player is not available for practice or is available for practice, but only to do running drills. So right away, they know they need to find a goalie. So they go out to their second team or they bring in somebody from the area. And now they've got that goalie for the practice. So that's looking at the integration of all these different partners who are creating some of this data flow. And we're bringing it into that, what SAP specializes in is that single ecosystem.
Hey, our buddy Bob has a question. I'll just read it out loud and then I'll hand it off to you. Scott, are you adding data from other sources to augment your information to help segment them? And what sources are you using?
Yeah, from Bob's question, and great question, Bob. We 100%.
You don't have to butter Bob up. That's quite all right.
He's our resident Patriots fan. It's like he's kept around so that he can be punched.
Well, the Patriots have advanced data for most of their contests. But yeah, we are using data from other partners. So when it comes back to Sports One, we may have a video provider that looks at all the data of the way players move on the field, and it literally takes all the video feed and turns it into pure data, right? And now you have a screen where you see the movement of players and you see where openings are created. And we'll bring that data from a partner inside of Sports One. So back to your question, yes. In various areas of Sports One, it is, that integration of an outside partner technology to augment the data that's already inside to drive better insights back to the coaches, the performance.
So, is there anything prescriptive about this? I mean, in other words, well, looking at all the data that Sports One has just looked at, Steph Curry's going to need to take a night off and sleep in order to be in optimal condition when he plays the day after tomorrow. But we do need to give him a day off, right? I mean, do you have like that level of prescription? You know, and that's at that level. That's pretty deep, but you get the point.
And I think what you see here is pretty much all teams have their resident experts in terms of, you know, how they would define when a player needs to take some rest or can go back out there for practice. So it's building, you know, algorithms inside of our technology to alert them when they go in there that morning and look at, you know, their roster. They know that there's four guys, four girls who have the potential to have an injury if you put them out there for practice with a heavy workload.
Oh, so, that's pretty.
Yeah, so it is
impressive.
It is both. But once again, you know, it's us providing those tools so that internally they can do with what they want, right? Because in the end, they're experts on where they feel players can consume more effort or need to take a step back. And we provide them with the tools to analyze that.
So, Brent, good.
No, you got a follow up to that?
Well, it's a different question, but you got it. I'll do it afterwards.
No, I was just thinking, you know, this week SAP did CX Live, and you know they announced, you know, their new CDP. Lots of developments going on. If PG's favorite 3-letter acronym right now, CDP.
Yeah. It stands for no such thing.
Well, given that, how closely do you keep up with like the internal developments, and how do you go about kind of interacting with the industry, you know, and trying to find a fit for these new technologies and acquisitions that SAP is constantly doing?
Well, I think, you know, one of the big advantages, I think, you know, everybody thinks that working for a big company can sometimes be a tough thing, and at certain times it can. You know, you can't make adjustments as quickly as you can with a startup of 10 people. But the other thing is, you know what's going on, right? They do a really good job of communicating top to bottom, you know, whether it's through, you know, we'll get on regular webinars where, you know, Christian Klein and the rest of the, you know, the team from the top is running us through, you know, what direction we want to really focus on heading through the next quarter. You know, that's sort of the internal side. And then, you know, we've got 27 industry verticals. So if I see a stadium solution that could be built off a technology that's being used in our smart city industry vertical, then, you know, there's a internal SAP, we call it our SAP GM site, which essentially is, it allows each of those industry verticals to highlight maybe a new solution that's coming to market. There's no way I can keep up with what's going on in 27 different industries, but you'll have periodic updates that, you know, they think are really important for everybody to know inside the industries, and they'll show you what they are. You know, they'll do a quick little video on it, highlight a case study, and then if you've got questions internally, you can go to those people. You know, very easy to find through our SAP GM and our different communication tools. And then on the other side, so how do I figure out what we need to do? Honestly, for me, my favorite part of my job is I get to talk to teams and leagues about, you know, what's keeping them up at night. And that's really the majority of my job. You know, it's obviously on the back end, trying to go back and, you know, maybe tweak things that we already have. You know, work with other groups to try to build something innovative off of an existing tool. But, you know, really it's going out and talking to teams, right? And seeing what is a common pain point across the industry, you know, that we can scale. You know, we want to figure out, is it one person that has, or one team that has that issue, or is it something that, you know, I've heard 5 out of, you know, 31 teams in this specific league tell me that's an issue. And then at that point, kind of determine which direction you want to go. Do we have a solution that fits to solve this problem already, or do we need to go and make some adjustments to an existing tool so that it fits really well? with that common pain point. And
What
typically,
about a Marsis? Like,
yeah,
when you think of what a Marsis kind of has the potential to bring to those opportunities, what does that what comes to mind for you in the sports industry when you think of what Emarsis can do as it's being integrated into the platform?
sorry, Emarxis. Sorry, I'm not.
That was the
Oh,
thing
the
you
new
just thought.
acquisition, kind of the customer engagement. Well,
Oh
maybe
yeah,
that's yeah.
yeah. I mean, I mean, one of the biggest things is, just really trying to understand where we can really create engagement, right? Engagement allows you as a company to understand what it is your customers want or how they're consuming. And I think that's something that, I think that integration into the SAP ecosystem will really help us to do, and to deliver back, um, you know, what it is that fans want to consume. And that's one of the biggest challenges that most teams have. You can't make a decision on what somebody wants 3 months later or 6 months later and assume it's going to be exactly the same the following year or following season. So how can you speed up that process of, both from a culture side, understanding, what the issues are, and then pushing that back out to them, with some of the things that we can do with our other tools. That makes
All
sense?
right. So, oh yeah.
Absolutely.
So, one last question before we wrap up. I mean, one of the things that sports is pretty notorious for is you scratch my back, I'll scratch your sponsorships, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I know you guys do actually. You kind of do an amazing job, I have to say, with the way you sponsor the Yankees. You have of course, you have the big billboard things on the stadium, but you also
Yep.
the entire like executive wing is pretty much SAPs, and
Yep.
to the credit of both you and the Yankees, it's gorgeous, right? So, and that, and it's SAPs, and the Yankees are not shy about talking about it. And I know from conversations with Yankee brass that they hold you guys in very high regard, and so. But generally, if you look around the industry, it's pretty much, yeah, we'll buy your software and you sponsor our team, which kind of leaves you with a lot less profit margin at the end of the day, there, right? So, I mean, how do you even have? To me, it's sort of on their part, honestly. Not, I don't fault the tech companies on this one. I kind of do fault the teams because it's kind of blackmail, right? And at the same time, look, there is obviously value in sponsoring a team. There's no question about it. Having, but then again, they're of course very tight about the willingness to let you use their logo as a customer, right? I mean, they're like tight to the point of ridiculous, actually. As much as I love sports and I love the people I know in the sports industry, the management segment that determines the logo use, I think are lunatics, right? Look, it's a logo, for God's sake. It's not like the end of your team if somebody uses it, right? So that all of that said, it is something that you do have to always consider when you're dealing with a team. And how do you even go about? And I honestly don't know how this works, but how do you go about even thinking about that? I really don't know what thought process you put into making that decision, because the financials are really strange in that circumstance.
Yeah, and trust me, it gets me into some very interesting conversations when I talk to a team and they're like, "Oh, you guys sponsor the NBA and the NHL and the New York Yankees. Obviously you'd love to see your logo up in our building." And then that comes back to, we're not spending money to put a software inside a venue when we already know that software is providing a ton of value back. So I think, I used to work on the sponsorship side, at XMC up here in Toronto. And the one thing I really discovered there is, sports is a great vehicle to tell a story too, right? So, if I'm going out with a really interesting solution inside of sports, I'm doing it with the Yankees. And I can go out to every customer meeting and talk about how the Yankees are using our, fan engagement customer retention tool, and I can talk to every single person in every room, and somebody in that room will understand exactly what that business case looks like. And if they're a Yankees fan, maybe they're much more likely to use something that the Yankees are using, because they've got that side to it. So I don't think and that's not, you still, the most important part is you need to build a solution that creates value. Because back to your point, I think one of the other big challenges in the industry is there's lots of sports technology out there. There's so many amazing companies, but I was on the team side and I would get 15, 20 calls, every month, about somebody trying to sell me something, a tool to use. You know what? We'll give it to you for free, to get started, right? We get to use your brand. We get to use the Maple Leaf Sports, or we get to use the Ottawa Senators or the New York Yankees to help us grow. But on the team side, then sometimes the big issue is you've got a tool that's creating no value, right? And has to fit inside of a really complicated technology infrastructure where it doesn't speak to the other tools in there. So, the challenge sometimes is you've got your, head of sponsorship who, all amazing people, and they're doing their jobs, right? But then sometimes you are forced to use a technology that's not providing you the value that you want within your department. So I think that's something that's gotten a lot better over the years, because people are starting to realize that, yes, it's great that we got some sponsorship dollars, but if we lost, $500,000 from a customers who didn't get retained because we're using this tool versus a really effective tool, then quickly, a couple of years down the road, when that sponsorship's up,
right,
you're probably looking out to something else, right? But that's the game that's played on both sides, right? I'm a startup. The Yankees use me. I'm telling everybody, I'm giving them
unless the Yankees tell you can't.
Exactly.
Which they do. I know that they're very. Yeah. I mean, you guys are massive at the Yankees. I mean, and that's like visible everywhere, right? You can't literally. The Yankees could even have said to you, "You can't talk about us," but the reality is, you can't miss it. You literally can't miss it. And every game I watch this year, I'm seeing across. I think it's right field, second deck. Is this gigantic SAP logo, right, splashed across the entire deck, and then. And every time I've been to the executive suites at the stadium, which is, a fair amount, I'm walking into the SAP suites, basically, right? And even though they're individual suites sponsored by lots of other companies, the entire floor is sponsored by SAP. So can't miss it.
Yeah, Scott Jeffer took me on a great tour. A couple of years ago. Amazing guy.
He is one of the best.
Yeah. If you want to go and sponsor, we're a company that works with, a lot of the Fortune 500 companies. If you want to sponsor somewhere, I think the suites and the luxury boxes at Yankee Stadium is a good spot to get some.
Oh God, yeah, it's beautiful strategy. Believe me, I've had that conversation with a bunch of people on the Yankees about how smart that is of you guys. I mean, it really is. Anyway.
I'm just curious, based off of Sven's comment, are you guys getting unlimited supplies of Adidas sneakers?
No, you're getting Fila. They're getting unlimited supplies of Fila sneakers. Fila?
I do have a pair of Stan Smiths just behind me.
Okay.
I may have actually bought them myself, so I might have to send a note out there.
Well, I'm going to tell, since Christian Klein is apparently on the supervisor board, he needs to start listening to some old school Run DMC, the My Adidas, and, start rocking the yellow and green when it's time to get ill. I think that's what the Run used to wear back in the day. And no, Bob, I did not get invited to any of the Ram suites. So, there it is. Yes. Yeah. Hey man, this is fun. I'm so glad that the technology worked out this time around, and the Wi-Fi was good.
Yes,
not a hiccup at all this time.
No, that was beautiful. Great conversation too.
My pleasure. You know, I probably rambled on way too much about my.
No, it's
No.
really. It was interesting. However, if you do get deported someday in the next couple of days, let us know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because that'll be good for us. We got reach that we didn't even know we had. So
Yeah, you got something on me already. That's
at your
not-
expense.
Exactly. If I don't see you at Yankee Stadium, we're down in Washington next year.
Right.
Oh
Right.
wow.
We'll know what happened. We'll find
Well,
you. Don't worry.
Yeah, just just watch your back. That's all I can say. No, thanks again, man, for sticking around with us. And let's make sure it's not 6 or 7 months in between.
Yeah,
because that was a while.
Way too long.
I know some of those technology issues can take a while to get fixed and all, but that's
Really.
We only have 2 routers here in Canada, so it takes a while to amp things up.
Oh man. All right. Take
Pleasure,
care,
guys.
and absolutely, we'll have you back for sure, man.
Oh, you can count on it. All right, my friend.
Take
Take
care.
care. All right, that's the end of another week, huh?
Yeah, it was a fairly long one too, I think, but it was a good one. Long one. We got to ride high off of last week's executive roundtable. Unfortunately, the energy from that's starting to wear off. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would carry me another week.
I think we're back in the Blur's Day category.
Yeah, yes, we are. In fact, I was talking about that with ServiceNow this afternoon. They said somebody said, "Happy Friday." I said, "Well, according to Brent Leary and I, it's Blur's Day again." And they went Blur's Day, and then they just started laughing.
And it'll be a cold day in Blur's Day before I accept an invitation to the Patriots there, Sven.
That's right. Or a warm day. It doesn't matter. It'll be a day.
Or
though.
any day.
Any kind of day.
All right. Well, that's it. That's the end of this week.
Yeah.
We will see you next week. Do we know who we're going to have?
Well, the funny thing is, I know we have an invited guest for Thursday. We definitely for this show, yes, we do. Actually, next week we got somebody who's is really interesting. Interestingly, his name is Lorenzo Aguilar, and he is my personal trainer. However, he also trains pro athletes on a number of teams, and currently is actually, I don't know if you've all heard of the Roy Jones Mike Tyson comeback fight. He's training Roy Jones, right? So we're going to be bringing him on to talk about training professional and collegiate athletes and what that means, and some of the bigger names. And he is a storyteller and a great guy, truly genuinely nice person. So we will be having Lorenzo on next for ETI. And we actually have somebody lined up for Thursday, but I'm so tired I literally don't remember who it is.
Yeah.
Right. So I will by then.
I'm just looking forward to the AARP heavyweight bout.
I know.
Roy Jones is stepping up in weight class to take on Mike Tyson for that AARP belt. So that's be interesting. Be interesting to see that.
Yeah,
I just hope nobody gets really hurt. That's all.
Well, yeah, but the funny thing is they might get hurt, not even like just trying to take the punch.
Pull a groin or something.
I just ripped my arm muscle.
Yeah, I just don't want to see that. But I hope everybody. I want to see a knockout. I just don't want to see somebody
like a pass. You want to see a knockout, but not a pass out.
Yeah, not a pass out, or somebody pull a Charlie horse or doing something.
And by the way, Roy and Mike, don't come at me, please, for saying those things. You're still way stronger than me.
Sven, you will be able to find something to do, I'm sure.
I'm sure you'll manage. Very well.
In the meantime, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and we will see you sometime next week. I guess it'll be Wednesday or Thursday or whatever day that is.
Any day.
And here's the 10-second pause.